What's good out there, Liquid Trucking? Welcome into the Liquid Trucking Podcast, episode 73 for your ear bones. I am your host, Marcus. Thank you so much for being here. Actually, ear bones, I should work on the vocabulary. Those are actually called ossicles, if I'm not mistaken. Little tiny bones in your ear that vibrate and help you hear the things that I am saying. So, it's not every day we can say we learned something on this podcast, but maybe you didn't know that those little bones were called ossicles, and we all leave out of here just 1/10 of a degree smarter today. Actually, what's going to make you smarter today is what we've got going on this podcast, and I'm very excited to bring it to you. So let's just jump into it, because honestly, we've got two interviews to get to today, and being that they both went longer than I had expected them to, I don't have a lot of time here to share with you about what we're going to be talking about. First of all, two awesome interviews today. We've got a new employee spotlight. We've got a new guy in recruiting. His name is Jake Debo. He's going to come on, joins us here in just a few minutes to talk about his career path, why he chose Liquid. He had some really interesting careers before he got into the trucking industry. And, we just did an episode a few weeks back about former careers of drivers, and we heard about some really interesting things. Jake's got some similarly interesting careers that he worked in, so we'll hear all about that. We'll just get to know him a little bit as a person. It's a great interview, and hopefully you'll get to see Jake around the Plattsmouth Terminal when you're out there running around in the future. After that, we've got to jump into a little bit more business type stuff because, as all of you know, the weather is turning. I'm not sure what you're looking at, where you're at, but I am sitting here recording this on the 4th of April, which obviously is a long time before you're going to hear it. But the 4th of April in Eugene, Oregon, we've had steady sunlight for about the last week. Only a very tiny bit of rain. That spring season is starting to come. My sinuses are starting to freeze up. There's liquid running out of every hole on my face. It's spring. And with spring comes the thaw. Out here on the West Coast, we call it spring breakup. I've heard it just referred to as the spring thaw out in the Midwest. And it's important that we talk about it because, obviously, we don't want you sliding off the road. We don't want you rolling over. We don't want you to get stuck and have to get pulled out by a tow truck or something like that. A, because it's super inconvenient for you, the load, the customer, everything else. B, there's a price tag attached to that, as you guys all know. And the last thing we want to be doing is just wasting away money out here during the money-making season, which is 365 days a year for Liquid Trucking, as you guys well know. So we are going to get Beau Hanke in here, driver training and development leader for Liquid Trucking. It's been a while since we've talked to him, but Beau's got some super unique experience. He hauled up in the Alaskan tundra, up in Alaska, I think it was kind of ice road type stuff. We'll talk to him about it. He's talked about it on the podcast before. It's super interesting, but Beau has a lot of experience in driving on less than paved roads, okay? And so we're going to pick his brain a little bit about things that you can avoid, tips about how to make sure the road you're about to take off on isn't just going to give way into a puddle. It's a great conversation, and also at the end, because I asked you guys last week about what some of the worst loads you'd ever hauled were, I went ahead and threw that question to Beau as well at the end of the interview, so you're going to want to stick around to the end of that one to hear it. It's a great episode from top to bottom here. We cover a little bit of just getting to know somebody and a little bit of serious stuff that might actually help you guys avoid incidents as the winter turns to full-on spring here. I know out in the Midwest, you're probably getting some rain from time to time out there. It's a pretty rainy season, and that's saying something for a guy that lives in the Oregon Willamette Valley, okay? But we're actually just into our second false spring is what we call these. We get these little 2-week bumps of really beautiful weather, enough to get your golf clubs out and wear shorts, like that type of stuff. You're still going to sink if you step into the rough in a bad spot, but you can go out and play some golf and actually feel some vitamin D getting absorbed. It'll only last for about 10 days, maybe 2 weeks tops. We'll be back to rain for, I don't know, till summer. It's pretty much how it goes over here. But I'm loving the sunlight I'm seeing outside the window right now. It's really making me, honestly, on a Friday afternoon as I record this, really making me want to duck out early and go hit the links. But I have a job to do. It's a very important job, and that is to finish this podcast episode for you. So We're going to get to Jake Debo here in just a moment. But first, I do want to remind you our landing page for everything podcast can be found at liquidtrucking.com. Head over to liquidtrucking.com. Right at the top of the page, you'll see a banner with my big face on it. Click that. It says learn more about our podcast. Once you're there, you'll see everything that we've got going on, every episode we've ever had with information about the guests. If there's important links here actually for last week's episode, maybe even the week before's episode, we have some links in there for you. If you want to check out the Road Art Gallery, where drivers have been sending in their tattoos for us to post up there, that's up there as well. There's also a link up there if you would like to help out Aaron DeFore and his family after they lost their home in that tragic fire. You can find that link in the description of the episode we talked about it in. So really, just every single thing you could possibly want to do with the podcast located at that webpage. We want you guys to go there and use it. It's phenomenal the amount of you that go there rather than to these other third-party podcast apps. You know, yeah, a lot of people listen on Spotify, a lot of people listen on Apple, but the vast majority of listens that we get to this podcast comes from the website, and we appreciate that greatly because that's where we put everything for you guys to interact with it. So keep on keeping on where that's concerned. All right, that's pretty much all I've got to say at this point. Let's get Jake Debo in here right now and find out a little bit about the guy.
Welcome to the gold standard of podcasts for the gold standard of drivers. This is the Liquid Trucking Podcast with your host, Marcus Bridges.
Welcome back into the Liquid Trucking Podcast. Very excited about this next segment. We've got a new employee spotlight here, and I love doing these because it gives me a chance to get to know the person. It also gives you, the drivers, a chance to get to know the person. Today, joining us, we have, and it's not really a new employee at this point. He's been on with us for quite a while now. But joining us is a transportation recruiter from Liquid Trucking, Jake Debo. Jake, appreciate your time. Thanks for being here today.
Absolutely, Marcus. I've had the pleasure of listening to a number of your episodes even before I came on board here, and I'm super pumped to be a part of it.
That's awesome, man. Well, I appreciate you listening. Let's go ahead. You know, I do this to people, put them on the spot every now and then. What are your thoughts on the podcast? I haven't asked somebody that just straight out in a long time because a lot of the drivers I talk to are guys I talk to all the time, and they're talking to me, so I know they must be okay with the podcast. But for your first time, what are your thoughts on this little thing we've put together here now 72 episodes in?
Man, I think it's super impressive. We've talked about it briefly before, but just kind of the tone that you set when you're talking to these drivers, a little rough on the edges, not in terms of production value or, your voice, honestly, got a great radio voice, but really just rough around the edges in terms of the language you're using, throwing a few curse words in there, here and there, that kind of thing. I think that helps guys feel like it's a genuine podcast. It feels a lot more real. So from that perspective, I was really kind of surprised to hear that, because usually when these, companies bring on people to do a podcast, they want everything pretty straight and narrow. They don't want you going outside the lines too much, but it seems like you get a lot of freedom here with working with Liquid, and you can definitely tell in the podcast. And I think that brings a ton of authenticity to it.
Thank you. It makes my job really easy, Jake, to be able to just be myself, because this is what you hear is who you'd talk to if I was sitting out in Plattsmouth with you having a cup of coffee over a conference room table. And so being able to do that and not have to be so corporate and buttoned up all the time, I think really gives us a more conversational format, which is what I'm looking for here. It's always kind of been one of those things where I want to get whatever information that Liquid has delineated in any way that they want me to do it. I'm fine with that, and I can do it. When it comes to just kind of the entertainment side of this podcast, man, getting to be myself makes people feel like they're just sitting in a room while they're listening to it, and they're kind of in on the conversation. And I can't say enough good things about all the people that work for this company, all the people that have helped out on this podcast. lended me their time, their conversation, maybe just a suggestion. Could not do it without the fantastic group of people involved. And I want to make that point because you're one of those guys. I know I'll get emails from you in the future about things for the podcast. Maybe you'll come back on again. So welcome to the team, man, and thanks for the kind words there. That was really nice to hear.
Yeah, absolutely. And going off that, it's just that sense of that genuine sense that you're just having that conversation. I think that is what brings guys on board. And they're like, yeah, I'd love to just come have a conversation. And I think, from a recruiting perspective, it really helps guys learn a lot about the company, because when you listen to this podcast, you listen to the other drivers talking, it doesn't sound like they're being forced to say something or they have to give a certain answer. Like you said, it just feels like you're having a conversation. And I think that's super important. And especially it helps me out a lot. I know I'm sending out the link to the podcast all the time. Guys are listening to it. So like I said, get a better sense of the company and what we got going on here. So it's super helpful for me. So thank you too.
Oh, dude, that's awesome. I'm so glad to hear it's working out in recruiting, because something interesting that a lot of the people listening to this podcast might not know is that we far exceed the number of liquid drivers in downloads every week. So there are a lot of people from outside the company listening to this podcast, and to be able to make it work out for you in recruiting is huge, because really, I think it gives a really good peek behind the curtain of what this company is really like and the great people that work here. And, you hear the stories. One of my favorite episodes that we did was the 500-year flood episode, where you got to hear about how not just Liquid Trucking, but the entire Plattsmouth community and the surrounding communities came together to help each other out in a just a drastic time of need. And, that really punctuates it for me. I'll say it again. It's a great group of people. If you're listening to this right now and you're looking for a gig in trucking, I would give Jake a call because it's definitely a good place to work. And you know that by just listening to how happy the drivers are when we get to talk to them. But let's go ahead and jump in here a little bit, because I want to get to know you from, obviously, for what you do for Liquid currently, but let's talk about a little bit about what led you here. Now, you gave me a lot of stats and a lot of information about yourself, so I want to try something here, because I know you're a big sports guy. Am I correct there?
Yes, very much so.
Okay, well, since you gave me some certain information here, I want to try something real quick. Joining the Liquid Trucking Podcast, 31 years old, standing 5'11" from Creighton University. Please welcome Jake Debo.
I appreciate you keeping the weight out of there.
Hey, man, I know that. I'm not going to give you my weight. I don't expect to broadcast yours to the world, but the height, you're taller than me, so you're the tallest guy on the podcast right now. And I know, for us under 6 foot gentlemen, we like to take that moment in the sun.
Yeah, you know what? Yes, thank you very much. We don't get it often, so I will take that moment for sure.
So Creighton University, there in Omaha, beautiful university, beautiful campus. I got to go down there and see it. Was Creighton always kind of the school that you wanted to go to? Is that a dream school? How did you end up there, and what did you study while you were going to school?
Yeah, sure. I mean, to answer the first question, no. I mean, Creighton was never even on my radar at all growing up. I grew up in St. Louis, Missouri. Spent, my first 18 years of life down there, and you never heard about Creighton. It was always, Mizzou, University of Missouri, or St. Louis University, or for the real smart kids, which I was not one of them, Washington University.
Yep.
But it wasn't until late in high school, I had the privilege, and for anybody listening who's from St. Louis, I went to DeSmet Jesuit High School. It's a very big deal. It's a much bigger deal in St. Louis where you went to high school versus where you work, where you went to college, anything like that. Where you went to high school is the most important thing. It's the first question any fellow St. Louisan will ask. So I went to DeSmet, and it wasn't until the tail end of my time there, junior, senior year, when you started to look into colleges, that I kind of discovered Creighton. And really all I was kind of looking for at the time was just, I didn't really want a big state school. The 300 size classes or student classes didn't really fit with me. To be honest with you, I didn't trust myself to in that kind of environment where you're not being really held accountable. And, if you didn't show up to class, it wasn't that big of a deal. So I was looking for a smaller university that would, class size of around 30 or 40, that would, again, keep me accountable. If I wasn't there, the professor was going to notice. And it definitely helped me out in my first couple of years. I'll say that. But, I just kind of one of those things where I was just researching through books online. At the time, I kind of wanted to be a weatherman on TV, doing that kind of thing. The weather had always fascinated me. Creighton just happened to have a meteorology program. So I said, heck, why not? Let's just go up and visit. So my dad and I came up and visited one random day. Can't even remember. We flew out the same day, and I was just blown away by that one visit. I loved the city, the size of the city. I loved the university itself, the layout, the dorms, even though they were super old. And now seeing what the dorms look like now, I kind of laugh, being like, wow, I had a great dorm room. But it's just one of those things where you just get somewhere and it instantly felt like the right place. And that kind of is what I felt here at Liquid Trucking, but I know we'll get to that. But it just kind of felt exactly like the right place. And for whatever reason, I had a connection with Omaha, and I really didn't look anywhere else after that. I had previously looked at Xavier University, kind of fit the same mold. Jesuit University, small. Cincinnati's not really small, but a smaller university. I really enjoyed that, but I didn't have the same connection that I did with Creighton. And so I came up in 2012, my freshman year, to just study meteorology and go down that path. But then quickly, I kind of got sucked into a new major there called energy technology. And that was a really heavily engineering focused degree with the focus on renewable energies. I learned a ton there. I got to do some really cool stuff working with like 3D printers, for example, when it was still brand new. Like getting a 3D printer was still thousands of dollars and a really cool piece of equipment. So getting to work with that kind of stuff was awesome. But at the end of the day, I'm not afraid to admit it. I'm just not a math guy. I really tried with the engineer. I've never tried as hard as I did with some of these engineering classes like Calculus 2 and thermodynamics, for example, which for anybody who like does that kind of stuff, thermodynamics is like the most basic thing. Mm-hmm. But I just couldn't get through it. Gave it a good effort. And so at that point, kind of didn't really know what was next for me. Didn't really know what kind of path I wanted to go down, which if I'm being honest, being at a school like Creighton with its costs, you kind of need to have a plan. Yeah. I didn't really have a plan. So that's what I just kind of ended up in advertising and journalism because I really enjoyed public speaking. I kind of enjoyed some of the journalistic aspects like investigating, but I read so much sports journalism growing up that I felt kind of a little bit of a tug there. And I'm glad I did. I learned a lot in the program. I met some great friends along the way. And that's where I ended up with just getting a degree in public relations and advertising from Creighton. But then that was pretty much it. I had to go one extra semester after that just because of the bouncing around of degrees. But, I was happy there. I was satisfied with my time. And more than anything, I'm forever grateful that it brought me up to Omaha.
That's awesome, man. Omaha's a great city, no question. Definitely some parallels there between you and I and our college experience. I changed my major 3 times, at least, maybe even more than that. Spent long enough at school to get a master's, did not get a master's. So you're one semester, one term after. Dude, that's a win in my book.
Yeah, I mean,
it took me a lot longer. I got out, but it took me a lot longer, and you can feel that in the bank account once that starts to add up,
Certainly. Yeah, definitely. Like I said, a place like Creighton, when you don't have that plan of what you're going to do or what career path you're going to attack afterwards, yeah, that can stack up pretty quickly.
Yeah, it can. And, I wish that I would have had the foresight that you had in high school to think like, hey, maybe this isn't the best for me. Maybe I can't stay focused here because I went to University of Oregon, state school, and the very first class I had, and I should tell you, there were 44 kids in my high school graduating class, okay? I grew up in a real small town in the mountains, 22 girls, 22 guys, and like 8 of them already had kids by the time we walked. So small ass town, okay? My first class at the University of Oregon, 8 a.m. fall term Monday morning, was a sociology class in a hollowed out Olympic swimming pool. There was 550 kids in that class. And I do not remember a thing from it. It was me and like 4 of the guys from the dorms. We used to sit up in the very back of the room and race our Nokia cell phones with their vibrating battery across the table. Like we never paid attention and nobody gave a shit. So, I think that that's definitely that's a feather in your cap for having that kind of discipline at the age of 18 or 17 when you're picking out colleges. I did not have that. You're the better man in that aspect for sure.
Yeah, I just, first of all, racing the Nokias, kids these days just won't understand the rush of racing Nokias across the desk.
They won't.
But yeah, It was, yeah, just hearing you talk about the 500 kid class size just gives me anxiety. And it's like, how can you be expected to focus on a class like that, where you're just all these new people, this brand new environment, you're looking around everything, you're trying to make new friends at the same time. It's a lot to handle. So if you have at least, and it kind of sounds bad, but at least a professor somewhat, watching over your shoulder to make sure you're doing the right things. Like, I thought that was important. And, the one class I had that was kind of big, it was a math class, which again, not great at, but that was like the one class. It was at 8 a.m. where I was definitely not going more than I was going for a year there. So I learned right there. I was like, yep, 300 would not have worked out for me.
Yeah, I hear you, man. Well, you've had some interesting career experience too. One that really kind of stands out to me here is your experience in Sioux City with the Sioux City Musketeers. Tell me about that.
Yeah, I mean, that was an incredible experience, and I'm super grateful for it. But I went up there. That was the job that I took after college. Again, without a plan. All I knew is that I was never super driven by money at that point. I was really more driven by passion. I wanted to find a career in an industry that I loved, because in my mind, if you do what you love, it's not going to be work, and eventually you will be successful in it, because it's easy to work hard in something that you love.
Yep.
And so that's why I wanted to, I took an internship up there initially, had a phenomenal boss at the time. His name was Anthony Hegstrom. He was tremendous. He was a really, really solid teacher for me. And so I took the job as a salesman, selling tickets and season tickets and promotions up there for about the first 3 months. So it would have been in like January, so halfway through the hockey season at that time. And then just, some weird things happened, some events, and Anthony ended up having to move on in the middle of the season. And that's when the president of the team came to me and asked if I wanted his role. And keep in mind, like, I had zero experience really in that role. It was the director of game operations, the director of media, and then eventually the director of community relations. So I had a little experience. Yeah, it was really overwhelming at the time, no doubt. There was definitely some panicked calls to my parents after this all went down and the offer was made. Not sure what am I doing? First of all, I'm in Sioux City. Where is this place? None of my friends are here. Now I'm being asked to do this job I know nothing about. But at the end of the day, I just decided I was like, well, I'm here now. We might as well just give it a shot, because they're not really expecting a whole lot from you. So just go and do the best that you can. So I went ahead and accepted the position. And again, really the only experience I'd had in it was just what I'd done on the internship, here and there. And that job included a lot of stuff. I won't go through all the points, but kind of the main things were, setting up the entire arena for a game day. So that means like putting up all of our signage, all of our banners, the tunnel cover where the guys, walk out from, putting that up, getting the music ready, getting the radio setup ready, getting the headset for the communication between me and my game day team, essentially, getting all plugged in and wired. And like the technical aspect of that alone was way over my head. So there was that, getting all the stuff set up for the in-between period of events and games, and getting the reads ready for our MC, and then additionally getting what we call the game script ready. So if you go to any sports game, they play, X advertisement at this time, or they read this advertisement, or they play this song, or do this thing. That's all in a script. It's all timed out within the game. And so it was my job to put all that together, put it in there. And that was just the game day stuff. And so I really had to lean on a lot of the people who had been there for a while. They were super helpful. Everybody there was some of the nicest people I've ever worked with. Still friends with a lot of them to this day. But it was a really challenging experience. That was the game day stuff. And then I was doing the media, which I kind of learned in school. So like all the social media, getting into graphic design, those kind of things. I just ended up teaching a lot of my skills through YouTube. YouTube's a great tool. You can teach yourself a lot through that. So I ended up getting fairly decent. By the end of my time there, I would say I was a damn good graphic designer for where I came from, at least. So, and then the community relations is a little bit easier, a little bit more straightforward, just reaching out to just partners in the communities, places like the Alzheimer's Association of Siouxland, the public school system, various charity organizations. I can't remember the exact name of it, but like the Humane Society, the Siouxland Heart something that just help with donations, helping out the less fortunate, that kind of thing. little bit more straightforward, but that was kind of my job. So, and that was intense. I was working close to 60, 70 hours a week there during the season. I'd go from Monday, and then you'd have a game. You'd work in Monday to Friday. Friday night you'd have a game. Saturday night you'd have a game, and then Sunday would be the off day. But in that first season, it was maybe the best and worst season to do it, because the team that year was absolutely incredible. I mean, they had a top 10 draft pick on the team. They had the best coach in the league who now is coaches in the AHL, the American Hockey League, just one step below the NHL. They had one of the best goaltenders in the history of the league on the team. So of course, they won the regular season trophy. So like in the NHL, if you're familiar, it's the President's Trophy.
Right.
So I'm brand new, having to figure out how to do a ceremony for the Anderson Cup. So that was a whole big thing. And then, of course, they made it all the way to the final game of the finals. And so that was a whole other thing where I had no experience. We were going back and forth from Chicago to play the Chicago Steel. I was driving there, driving back, having to get a game set up and turned around in one day, get preparation. If we win, got to get confetti and special lights, everything all together. It was a lot, and it was a really intense first half year, but I don't know that I've found something that's, when you're done with it and you sit down and you just kind of breathe, I don't know that I found something that was as rewarding as that ultimately was. And so I continued that on for the next 2 years, made some amazing relationships along the way with a lot of great players, phenomenal coaches, athletic trainers. One of the athletic trainers that I worked with, her name's Kedron. She did work for the Rochester Americans, which again is in the AHL. One of the first female athletic trainers at that level at the AHL. So I'm really proud to have known her and worked with her. She was tremendous when she worked for the Musketeers. She was a real trailblazer at that time. A lot of the assistant coaches were phenomenal, and even the head coach at the time who took over for the first coach when I was there, he taught me a lot about hard work, not bullshitting, and just like getting stuff done. And with hockey, especially with the coaches, they're direct, they're straightforward, they'll tell you what's what. And I think it was something I needed at the time. He really helped me focus in a little bit. So I really appreciated, my relationship with all the coaching staff because of that reason. And like I said, a lot of them, I'm still friends with them to this day. I'll text them every once in a while. We'll chat about certain guys that we had who are, playing in the NHL now. There's a few, but, it was a really great experience. And it was definitely the best experience I've had until I came here to Liquid.
How cool, man. You talk about a kicked into the deep end of the pool moment. Getting that job offer after being an intern for not very long that had to be just a very defining moment in your life, just the way that you were able to respond to it. And I want to make a note here, Jake, because I've been doing this broadcasting thing now for 20 years. I've been in it for a long time, and I think that a lot of times there's a misconception with people that do what I do, or people that call sports games. They do the play-by-play, or they do the color analysis, or guys that MC events. Your MC there in the stadium. A lot of people think that we are the ones responsible for putting together the things that we're going to say, and then we say them, and that's the job. That is not the job. The job is to say the things that a guy like Jake has spent 80 hours putting together and say them correctly. That's it. All the work gets done by people like Jake in those positions, and I feel like you guys are the unsung heroes of a lot of productions, be they sporting productions or music or theater or anything. A lot of the times, the people that get the credit, the people behind the microphone, aren't the ones that poured their heart and soul into it for a week prior or more. And so hats off to you, because I know just doing what I do, that's a lot for me. But to be able to put the whole thing together and then all the ancillary stuff around it, dude, I would have pulled my hair out on day one. So the fact that you made it 3 years with responsibilities like that, just getting kicked into the pool, hell of a job, man. And what a fun job too. It sounds like you really enjoyed it.
Yeah. I mean, it was fantastic. And with a job like that, if people know your name, it means that stuff is going wrong. And certainly went wrong from time to time. I remember one where I installed these fog machines into this rack that hung above center ice, and anytime the team would score, it would shoot out, the colored, green and yellow colored fog. for the team. And of course, one of these days, we're playing the Lincoln Stars and we score a goal, the fog goes off, and the middle fog machine just doesn't stop going, and it keeps going, and it keeps going, and all of a sudden, and everybody in the arena can see where I'm sitting at. I sat in like a converted suite. So next thing I know is I'm trying to figure out what's going on. I look down, the entire arena plus the coaching staff is looking up at me, being like, "What the hell is going on, dude?" This thing kept going until it ran out of fog. It kept going until it ran out of fog. One of the coaches had to go out in center ice with a trash can to collect the fog juice that was dripping out until I was finally able to get to the catwalk and actually just unplug the unit altogether. So It's not like it was always pretty. It wasn't always perfect, but like I said, if people didn't know who I was, then that meant I was just doing a good job. I just did it for, the enjoyment of the people there, for the guys to feel like they were playing in a premium spot, and just to really elevate the entire experience from the players, fans, and especially those players' parents too, who really appreciated that kind of stuff.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I grew up close to a small, I think it was WHL is the league that it was in, but the Tri-City Americans and the Spokane Chiefs and the Portland Winterhawks over here. Yep. And what I didn't know until I was much older, my parents used to take me to those games when I was a little kid, and gosh, they were a blast. I never knew that those kids were as young as what they were and playing for the amount of money that they're playing for. It made a lot of sense that you saw so much passion on the ice, because those guys were playing for their entire hockey lives every single night of the week, and it never occurred to me that that was the case. I always thought these guys were just, these are the AAA ball players. They're just waiting to get called up. They're just down here going through the motions. No, I saw so many bench clearing brawls in those games that we went to that, take them, 45 minutes, an hour to clean up the ice and get everybody in the penalty box. Like, it was amazing. And when you mention the parents of the players, like that really brings it full circle to me. These guys aren't that old that are playing this level of hockey, right?
Yeah. Those Western leaguers, man, those are some tough boys up there. Like they'll throw fists, they won't slap lips a lot. They like to throw down. So, but yeah, it is kids, especially in the USHL where I was at. It's kids who are primarily 16 to 20 years old, and that's the stop that they will make, before they go on to play either Division I college hockey somewhere or go get drafted and play in the NHL. So I guess the majority of the guys that I worked with went on to play a few years in college hockey. A couple of them were lucky enough to win some national championships along the way.
Wow.
But they weren't getting paid. Yeah, they weren't getting paid, and it was all for the future. They came here because they were one of the best, 16, 17, 18-year-old players in their state on their AAA team. And then they come here to get that D1 offer, but then they still got to work from that to go and get that NHL draft pick or that NHL offer out of college. But like I said, I was lucky enough to work with some super talented guys who were first round draft picks, second round draft picks, that kind of thing, and who made their way to the league. But when they're playing at that level, yeah, it's every night you're just going out there trying to put on your best show. If you're not maybe the most talented skater or puck handler or something like that, you got to show ways in which you bring value to the team. And sometimes that's fighting, and it is crazy to think about 16, 17, 18-year-old kids just going out there and fighting like that, because in college hockey, it's not allowed. So it's kind of reversed. But yeah, you're right. The passion that exists there is just, it's really special. And, the players in general are just great guys. And so just seeing the success they had and from all that work they've been putting in from a young age is super rewarding.
That's awesome, man. Well, thank you. We've been trying to make room for hockey on this podcast for a long time. Jason talks to me about it from time to time. I know we got a lot of hockey fans out there listening. Now we got somebody that's actually had his hand in the pie. And for our hockey conversations, I'm putting an earmark by your name. You're going to come back on here and talk, real in-depth hockey with us sometime soon, all right?
I love that. Absolutely.
Okay. Good. All right. So I want to fast forward here. All that fantastic experience aside, something eventually brought you here to Liquid Trucking. Can you talk to us about what it was and why Liquid Trucking, and eventually, once you found the job and you went through the interview process, what made you want to come to work for Liquid Trucking?
Yeah. So, I mentioned I made my way back to Omaha worked at a couple different things, advertising, marketing. And then after that, I got my first gig in trucking with the company back in town. And that's where I really kind of learned about the industry in depth. I was doing a lot of different things there, kind of similar to the job with the Musketeers. But more than anything, I just felt like when I was there, the majority of the people that I worked with, I just really, really enjoyed. I thought it was the type of people that I could work with for long term. I built some super solid relationships there as well. I still try to go grab dinner once a month with some of my old coworkers from there. So I really loved the people that I was meeting in this industry and kind of the vast majority, the wide array of people I was meeting. I've never been in a more diverse kind of workplace than with my first job in trucking. And so that's really what kind of piqued my interest in the industry. Now, my overall experience there wasn't a good one. I'll be honest. It wasn't good. And despite, my love for the people there, my experience was so poor, it kind of scared me off from trucking a little bit and seeing how things were run. So I tried my hand at recruiting at a staffing agency just because I thought recruiting would play to my strengths of interpersonal communication, just general communication skills, again, public speaking, and things were going great. But, I was in an industry that was fickle. And it's one of those things, it's one of those things that your mom always says, like, there's always, everything happens for a reason. There's always a plan. There was layoffs I was caught up in at that last job. And that was a scary moment because I had just bought a new car. I just got engaged. I was looking to buy a house. And then all of a sudden, poof, there goes my job. So it was a scary time. And that's when I started looking and I saw liquid trucking come across. And I didn't really know a ton about it, but all I knew when I looked at it was like recruiting. Well, I've been doing recruiting. I've worked in trucking, so I'm just going to throw my hat in the ring here. But to be honest with you, Marcus, I didn't even really give it a whole lot of thought because of my past experience had been so poor. I was like, there's no way that I'm even really going to pursue this very hard. But then Nick reached out to me, wanted me to come out for an interview, which I obviously, was more than happy to do. So I came out here and then, right away to the initial conversation with Nick, I felt like something was a little bit different here. I couldn't quite put my finger on it at the time, but it was such a great interview. He showed me around the building, kind of some of the things they were kind of putting in here for the employees to make the quality of work a little bit better, a little bit more fun. And I was like, okay, like, all right, like these guys clearly care a little bit about their people here. They want to make sure they have stuff to keep them happy, little things like a gym, a little gym they have here, which was important to me. And, just like a few like fun things to do, like a pop a shot, like some pinball machines, nothing crazy, but
right.
Just little things that showed I was like, okay, because I'd worked at companies that were like very new, hit modern and had all the bells and whistles, but it was all kind of a facade. And with here, it felt different. So I came back for a second interview, did a little bit more looking around, saw the training bay, met with Jason and Dave. And again, there was just something about them where I felt like they were not bullshitting me, to put it frankly. I felt like they were being real upfront and honest with me. And I felt like they were people that I could trust, more or less. And to be honest, I didn't trust myself a little bit because of some of the experience I'd had and got sucked in it on the past. But I decided again, and then we kind of went through the motions, made me an offer, and I was, very humbled by the offer that they gave me. It really kind of changed a lot of things because I was, it was nice. I won't get into the specifics of it, but it would really, it meant a lot to me. And I never had anybody kind of put that level of faith in me right off the bat. And so that was a really defining moment when they did that. And then once I got in here on day one and Nick took me around everywhere and showed me the entire complex, the truck shop, the trailer shop, the country bar and grill, all these things, I was like, this is a little bit too good to be true here. And I have tons of text messages with family and friends being like, I might have stumbled on something really special here. And it goes back to that conversation about Creighton where I felt right. I got in here on day one, and for the first time, and this even goes back to the hockey job, because I was a little iffy on it to the start. It was the first time that I left my first day of work where I was like, this was the right decision. This was the right call. And it was an unbelievable feeling to feel that for the first time. And I got it through the people that I met here, through the complex that they have here, the stories that I heard about how they treat their people, about how Liquid treats their people, their drivers, all their administrative employees, how long a lot of these people have been here. It just felt right off the bat. And it was such an unbelievable feeling to have. Like, I haven't stopped smiling. I know my fiance has noticed a change in my mood coming home every day. Like, I'm always really happy. I got a big grin on my face. I'm still going to, if she asks me about work, I'll just say it was good. But in all reality, it was a good day. And that's because of the people here, seeing Josh walk around every day and just talk with everybody, having a good time. Like, that is also something that I think is super important. Like, having your leadership be around, be present, talking to people, just being one of the guys, more or less. I think it's a really good sign of strong leadership. And I had not seen that before. And, so I just kind of came to Liquid by chance, random chance, but it's one of those things in life that by chance you find yourself at somewhere perfect. And I think, honestly, that's what I found here at Liquid.
That's awesome, man. I love to hear that. And, a lot of times I think that some people that don't work at Liquid might think that when you talk about it like that, or drivers talk about how much they like working here, or I'm talking about the fantastic group of people that I get to talk to all the time, it might be looked at as like, well, yeah, this is the Liquid Trucking Podcast. Of course you're going to say that. I'm not trying to sell it, man. It sells itself. I get to talk to people every single time that I open the mics up on this podcast, and there's one consistent thing about them that I noticed with every other trucking company that I've worked for. It was all the time with all those companies, and it's never with Liquid, and that is, I don't talk to people that are beaten down. And regardless of how you do that as a company, how you run the company, how you get to that point where your employees are comfortable, they're happy, they feel like they're valued, they're listened to, and they have a good gig to work, that's something you don't have to sell. Once you're there, and I do feel like Liquid's there based on not only your anecdotal experience, but everybody else on this show, it's a slam dunk of a good company. And that's why I do say, like, not to put another feather in Jake's cap here in the recruiting side, but if you're looking for a gig, it's not a bad one to have. And I think we've covered that from both on the road and in the office now. We don't talk to people that are pissed off about working on this show because I really haven't found one yet to talk to at Liquid Trucking. So I think that's a really good rubber stamp to put on it, right? And I'm so happy for you and your fiance too, because I know what it's like. Before I found this job, I was selling cars, and that was the worst. Like, I dreaded hearing that question from my wife when I came home. How was your day? Because it's just going to cascade all these bad feelings that I've had for the last 10 hours. And, oh yeah, I didn't sell a car today, so there's that. It's just, it's such a huge uplifting experience to get a gig where you're happy and you go home and you can be a better husband or fiance, whatever the case may be. And also I want to say congratulations on the pending nuptials. When's the big day?
Oh, not for a while yet. We're getting married on, I gotta get this right here. It's going to be June 27th of 2026. So we had a special place in mind to do the ceremony. So it's going to be a little bit longer engagement, which we're fine with. We've been together for over 5 years now, so waiting a couple more was not a big deal to us, but it's still a year away, so I got some time.
Okay, you got some time. Well, when you get off the mic here and you go and check and make sure you got that date correct before you tell your wife when this airs, okay? Or your soon-to-be wife. Just, I got lucky. I got married over Memorial Day weekend, so I pretty much always have like a signifier on the calendar that my anniversary is on the way. But I bet you got it right, man. I've got some confidence in you because you paused for a second to make sure that you got that date right. And with the long engagement, I think my wife and I were engaged for about 1 year and 8 months. Same thing. We wanted a venue, and we didn't want to have to take a second mortgage out to get it. I totally get it, man. Well, Jake, I can't thank you enough for your time here today. We've gone almost 40 minutes, believe it or not. These things the time tends to get away from me when we're having a good conversation. thank you for being here. Thank you for running us through kind of your history and just talking about yourself. That's why we brought you on here today, is to learn about you. And as you know, here on the podcast, I always like to clear some room at the very end of an interview for some final thoughts from my guest. So anything that you would like to say, anything that you'd like to add, shout outs, anything's on the table here. Take as much time as you need.
Yeah, sure. I mean, we were just talking about it, but, and I say this to people on the phone, but I've worked in obviously a number of different industries: sports, advertising, medical staffing, and then also trucking and transportation. And, those jobs, like I said, they put a lot of bells and whistles in front of you, a lot of like bright flashing lights to kind of distract you. And it's all kind of a facade at the end of the day. That's just nowhere treats their people the way that Liquid treats their people. I've never been treated like I have been treated here just through the first, little while that I've been here. So again, I'm a recruiter, and you might think I'm just saying this just to get more business, but it's more than that. I mean, like you said, you're just have to come and experience it for yourself, what this place is really like. But at the end of the day, I'm in the business of helping people. I'd say to lots of people, I want this to be your last trucking job that you have. And I truly think for the people that have the right mindset, who are willing to, put in a little hard work, learn the tanker business, learn what it takes to be a driver here, there's nowhere better that A, you can be a driver, and B, that you can maybe even work anywhere. So, and I guess by extension of that, just a shout out to everybody who's brought me on board here: Nick Meyer and Jason Eisman and Dave Blotzer, the three who I interviewed with. At least so far, I can't find any kind of hole in the armor, and I am just so grateful for the opportunity to be here. And I look forward to nothing more than helping this place grow and turning it and giving it the recognition that it deserves, not only within the trucking industry, but just as a company as a whole. Because I think it's a special place, and it deserves a lot of attention.
Very well said, Jake. Can't thank you enough for that. I second it all. Exactly what he said with an exclamation point at the end. That's all I will add to it. That, and only because I saw the jacket you were wearing earlier when we had a video conference meeting earlier today, I am going to go ahead and say one thing that might get under your skin, even though they're not that good, and that's go Red Wings. Hey,
tough loss last night. We came back late in the game, but you know what? You guys, you gave us our 10th win in a row, so that's all right. You're not going to get under my skin. It's hard to get under my skin when my team is the hottest in the league, 110 in a row. We might be looking at another deep cup run, so you won't ruffle my feathers. Don't worry.
Good. Well, good luck to the St. Louis Blues as they go on their cup run, and as we've been saying for the last 12 or 15 years in Detroit, we'll see you next year.
Next year's the year, though. Next year, Stevie Y is going to get it done. He's going to get it done.
I have faith, man. Jake Debo, thank you so much for your time here today. We'll get you back on again soon. I'm sure of it.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, Marcus. I really enjoyed it.
All right, welcome back into the Liquid Trucking Podcast here. I told you in the open that this episode was going to be kind of a two-parter, and now that we're familiar with our new guy in recruiting, Jake Debo, I wanted to check in with somebody who we all know and love, but we haven't talked to on the podcast here in quite some time. So please welcome to the show driver training and development leader, Beau Hanke, back to the podcast. Beau, it's good to have you on again, my friend.
It's good to be here.
Now,
I'm sure there's a round of applause going on in all the trucks.
There is, from all I can hear it. Actually,
yeah, right.
I just heard yesterday. Actually, my dad called me from Boise, Idaho, out of nowhere. He's out there driving around for a doctor's appointment, and he saw a liquid truck out there. So you guys do get out here in my neck of the woods. I know it. Polar Bear texted me from California the other day. It's super cool to know that there is a chance that if they were giving you a round of applause, I might hear it. I do live right next to a freeway, Beau.
There you go. I'm sure you probably did hear it.
I hope so, man. I really do. But thank you for joining us, because I know, you work with so many of the drivers. You see them all when they're coming through. And you have some very unique experience in the truck yourself, with hauling experience and working on both sides of that aisle. Wanted to bring you in today to talk about what we call over here on the West Coast in the rural areas spring breakup. I'm not sure if you guys have a different name for it, but it's that first big thaw when everything gets really soft. And I know that it probably pales in comparison to the winter as like a hazard, but I wanted to bring you on to talk about it, maybe see if we can prepare some drivers the best that they possibly can be, because I know, sometimes trucks slide off a soft road, sometimes trucks sink in and get stuck. So talk to me about the season a little bit. First of all, is it referred to as spring breakup where you're from?
Well, as you know, Alaska is part of my background. So yeah, we call it a breakup up there as well.
Okay.
Here, I'm not really sure. Spring thaw, yeah. I guess. But yeah, I mean, it's the same. Frost starts coming out of the earth a little bit and softens everything up. We get a lot of rain too at this time of year, so that softens a lot of stuff up too, staying off those shoulders and picking your spot where you want to drive, and being careful in parking lots and at customers, just not too long ago here, we had a couple drivers stuck at a customer location, and we had to reach out to them and let them know that they needed to clean that area up or pick a different area, because we weren't going to go in there and pay $1,200 every time one of our trucks got stuck.
Wow, that is not a small bill to yank a truck out. I mean, it's a big, heavy piece of machinery. It doesn't surprise me, but you definitely want to minimize those. Right. So what kind of things, and I guess, with your experience up in Alaska, obviously, very rugged up there. You're in real rural places. I imagine that this was something you really had to think about, because if I'm not mistaken, you were hauling super heavy stuff as well. So talk me through that a little bit. How did you go about checking to make sure that this was an okay route before you take off on it with the risk of getting stuck or sliding off the road?
Well, the good news up there is they have permafrost, so it stays frozen pretty well. Even on the north slope, it was pretty frozen for most of the time, until, deep into the summer. You only get really maybe a month or two on the slope where it would get nice for a little while, but then the mosquitoes would carry you off at that point, so it didn't really matter.
Right.
You didn't have to worry about the roads anymore. But no, we'd tug land-yacht oil rigs around, and they would put these ginormous metal encased boarding down on the roads for any time they had to turn corners or make any sort of maneuver that wasn't on the hard pack. Mm-hmm. Going out on the tundra, we weren't able to really drive on the tundra other than with Tundra approved tires, which were like big balloon monster truck tires that
right.
wouldn't hurt the Tundra,
Sure.
So, but yeah, it would rain, it would get soft. You just got to be careful, man. Usually we'd get stuck in the gravel that they put down to prevent us from getting stuck, right? They'd lay it on too thick and then it would get wet and you get stuck in that. Dualies aren't the greatest for getting out of places.
No, not at all. And, thick gravel, I feel like that's probably why they use thick gravel on runaway truck ramps, is because it'll stop you eventually. And, kind of counterproductive there, but it seems like their heart was in the right place, Beau.
Right. Eventually they'll drive it down and they'll be able to drive on it, right?
Right, exactly. So anything that is like something maybe in training that you go through as far as soft roads that maybe we can just refresh the drivers on while they're listening here, or anything that you might just as kind of a general tip give the drivers as we start to face into this season a little bit?
Yeah, I think the biggest one is Iowa and their Class B roads. Mm-hmm. They're not always super well marked. Those can be extremely. We had a rollover last spring, I want to say it was. We had a driver miss his turn, which is a pretty common thing. And, your GPS, what's the first thing it does? It tells you to turn down a road and you're not familiar with it to get turned back around. Well, he followed his GPS and that road turned into a Class B road. And as soon as he hit it, it was a sloppy, muddy mess, no gravel, and just slid into the ditch and rolled over. So, those are huge, but I'm going to hand it to Iowa. They do a great job at their gravel roads that they do keep up on. Nebraska, I've been on a few roads out there during this time, and they can get pretty slick and sloppy. So, stick to the big roads as best you can. unless you absolutely have to get off the pavement, break the pavement, as they say. Going into these farms, they have tractors, they can kind of pull you around, but they can damage some stuff too. So, get out, walk it if you need to, survey the area, make sure you can get turned around in there. You're not having to nose up into an area where that's less traveled, because those are going to be the soft areas, right? Where the farmers aren't driving, they're not packing that shit down. So making sure you're staying in those good areas and keeping to where the big heavy stuff's, been moving through.
Sure. And I'm glad that you said it. Just get out and look. We talk about get out and look, obviously, all the time. And I'm sure in your orientations and training, this is just another example of when that's a really good idea. I mean, if you get out and you sink up to your ankle, it's probably not where you want to be. It's pretty simple, right?
I mean, a lot of it is judgment, right? These guys are making judgment calls out there every day. So don't let that one slip you, because it seems like not a big deal until your truck's laying on its side, or you're stuck up to the axles and it's costing big money.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. I do. This might be a little bit more of a safety department question. We tried to get Dave in here this week. He's a busy guy. We weren't able to, and I'm going to throw this question at you to see what you think about it, or at least what you've seen. How does the spring season and the thaw marry up with the winter season in terms of the amount of incidents we see? I've got to just think logically and think that winter, with all the storms and the ice and the blizzards, you're going to see more incidents happen during that season. But is spring kind of the second worst season for you guys as far as incidents are concerned because of the conditions?
Well, I mean, we had a pretty mild winter this winter. We had a few good storms. We dealt with a lot of ice this year, but most of that we got pretty lucky with. Mm-hmm. Waited for it to thaw, got a plow truck through there, putting salt down, and then we were able to go. I would say spring we probably get stuck more. Spring and fall, when it gets wet, we get stuck, pulled out a lot more than probably in the wintertime, depending on the winter, right?
Yeah.
If it's a heavy snow winter, then yeah, but we can get out with chains or socks a lot of the time in the snow. But you get stuck in the mud, it's pretty much over for you.
Yeah, absolutely. So, personal question for you. Which would you avoid more if you were still behind the wheel right now? Would you avoid the blizzard more, or would you avoid like soft ground more if it was your choice and your dispatcher was offering you, hey, we got to go. If you go right, you're going to get sunk quick. If you go left, you're going up into the mountains and there's 6 feet of snow. Which one of those two are you taking, Beau?
I'm taking snow. I'm just used to driving in snow. Snow doesn't bother me. Snow is traction to me, as they say in Alaska. Snow is traction.
Right.
So you never know what you're going to get yourself into, because, the day could be doomy and gloomy like it is right now, right? Mm-hmm. But you go down a road and the rivers, or the little pond is up over the road, and you got to make a decision. Are you backing all the way out? I don't like that. I don't like the unknown. It's snowing. I know it's snowing.
Gotcha. And not much is going to change about that, especially if you're up in Alaska, right?
You're going to deal with it as it comes. Slow down. You're prepared for it. And if you have to, get off the road, right? Not a whole lot of options when you're driving down a gravel road to a farm location and all of a sudden the road is a quicksand.
Right.
You don't really have an option there. What, back all the way out? Maybe call a farmer to try to pull you out, but that gets expensive. The unknown is my least favorite.
Sure, it makes total sense, especially if you've been doing it for a long time and you're really comfortable in certain situations, especially the ones that you see all the time. It's these unknown ones that you don't see that crop up that can still take even the most battle-tested driver and throw him for a loop. It's that
right.
You say that the word the unknown is just such a big all-encompassing word. Kind of makes the hair stand up on the back of my neck, to be honest with you, Beau. But
yeah.
Well, listen, I actually, because we don't get you on here very often, I wrote down something here that I wanted to ask you that kind of departs a little bit from what we're talking about, but I feel like we've got a lot of good information, some good advice out from you real quick here. So while we've got a couple extra minutes, I want to ask you a question that I fielded to some drivers recently, and that was, what's the worst like the absolute worst load you've ever hauled? Be it up in the tundra, be it, you got stuck somewhere. It was just a terrible in and out. What pops into your mind first when I ask you what the worst load you ever hauled was, Beau?
I usually tell this in orientation, so some of these guys probably either remember or maybe they don't. But it was a load out of Boone, Iowa. It was actually working for this company. A load out of Boone. I think it was Agri Solutions, not PDM. And I was loading sunflower seed oil. Took a half hour to load it. I waited 4 hours for paperwork. I'm headed to Detroit and I'm delivering to Fruito Lay. This was probably 4, 5, 6 years ago.
Okay.
Anyway, so I'm waiting on this paperwork. You know, you're getting antsy in the truck. 4 hours is a long time to be waiting on this paperwork. Guy keeps coming out. He's saying, hey, we're working on this paperwork. Lab's working on it, blah, blah, blah. So I'm like, all right, I'm getting itchy. I'm calling my dispatcher, like, hey, what's going on here? At that time, it was Chris Wellenborg was my dispatcher. If you've ever met Chris or had him on the show, he's what I call he's the Messiah. Like, everything he says is calm, collected, like, everything's going to be all right, Beau. Just keep me updated on what's going on. So, he would calm me down for a little bit, and, an hour would pass, and I'd kind of lose it. And I'd call him up. I'm like, I don't know what the heck's going on here. It's taking forever. I'm running out of time. So anyway, I finally get my paperwork. I don't really look at much of it. It's just sunflower seed oil, right? I got my trailer on. I'm hooked. I'm rolling. So I'm headed to Detroit. I get stopped down the road the next day. I drive all the way in there. I get in there probably, I don't know. It was probably 7:30. It was dark out, 7:30, 8 o'clock. And I'm not sure. It might have been spring or fall. It was kind of cold out. So most likely it was probably fall because it was dark around that time. Anyway, so I get in there. I get all hooked up. They're using their pump. I got my hose out. I'm ready to rock. I want to get this off because it's close to my weekend, and I'm ready to get back and go home. Well, the guy takes my paperwork, takes a sample, goes inside, comes back out and says, hey, they're missing something on the paperwork. And, I'm baffled by this because it took 4 hours to get that paperwork.
Right. You thought they made the paper.
This is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Right. Like, you guys had all this time with this paperwork and just forgot one little percentage in the build out in the C of A. So I'm like, oh my God. Anyway, so they're rejecting me, right? Well, it's 7:30 at night. I'm like, geez, this has now become my baby, and I have to deal with it. So I call Chris up at Bardo. I was working for Bardo at that time. I call Chris, and he's like, all right, well, we'll try to figure something out. Well, luckily, normally this doesn't happen. Luckily, they find something pretty quick, and I'm headed to 8 Mile. If you're familiar with M&M, that's where he's from.
Okay.
So I'm headed down to 8 Mile in Detroit, and I'm going to go deliver to one of these reclaim type operations. It's like the guys who go out and get the washers and dryers from a truck that rolled over and stuff like that. So
okay, gotcha.
I get there, I show up to this building. It's like an old ass building with hundreds of small windows that have been broken out. Looks abandoned. So I back in. The back end of this place is a nightmare. I have to back in off the road, around the corner blind side, and then into this building. So I get in there, and he's got a bunch of totes sitting over there. He says, all right, we're going to load into these totes. I'm like, all right. I didn't really count them. I'm trying to get out of there. I'm running out of time. I'm just trying to get this done.
Right.
I have to do this by myself. I don't have any help. So I've got to drag the tote over because I had to get my ass end down on my trailer. So I'm trying to, I tried to get it in the lowest spot inside this building, and the totes were away from there in the highest spot to keep them out of the water. Right.
Of course.
So I'm dragging these totes over, and I'm unloading into these totes by myself, 250 gallons at a time. And then he would come back over and take them back into somewhere else with a forklift. So I drag him over. I start filling this thing. I get all the way to the end, and I've got about 500 gallons left. And he says, we don't have any more totes.
Oh, no.
Well, when I got there, he could speak English. When he ran out of totes, he could no longer speak English at all. It was no more totes, no more totes. So I'm like, what the heck is this? So I said, no, you need to take, well, I called my dispatcher first, obviously. I called Chris, and Chris is yelling at me like, you leave that there. You got to leave it there. You're not taking this with you. That's a huge fuel charge, blah, 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 all this stuff. I'm like, I know. I told him that. He can't speak English anymore. I don't know what to do. So I said, I'll leave it in, this isn't one of our customers. This is somebody who's just taking this.
Right.
So I can be a little bit more aggressive with this guy. Like, I'll leave it in your parking lot. I don't care. Well, 30 minutes later, I've got a Mercedes pulls up and they nose into the front of this building and two guys jump out. It's his sons. Well, they can speak English. They come over and I feel like they're trying to muscle me out of there. Like, you're going to take this. He's got more totes. They're just dirty. He doesn't want to put the product in those dirty totes because it'll ruin the product. So I'm like, I see the totes over there. Let's just get the totes over there. I'm out of hours. I'm freaking out. Like, I'm not staying on 8 Mile, first of all.
Right.
Second of all, I'm an hour and a half away from a truck stop.
Oh, wow.
From 8 Mile. Yeah, so this is turning into an emergency situation. So anyway, these guys come in, and I finally talk them into telling their dad, hey, let's just put it in these totes so he can get the hell out of here, and we can move on with our lives. So can he. So finally, I get it all off. He signs the paperwork, and I call Chris on the phone, and I say, hey, Chris, I'm out of hours. Something needs to happen here. I'm not staying here. And he starts laughing. It's 10:30 at night. He starts laughing and messing with me. He's like, oh, come on, you got to stay down there. I'm like, no. This isn't funny at this point. Like, ha, ha, ha. I just dealt with, like, the most ridiculous thing ever. I'm thinking I'm going to end up in the back of this Mercedes and with concrete shoes on.
Right.
Like, this is not a good situation to make jokes. Well, he thought he was funny. Anyway, he's like, all right, just get to a truck stop. And we'll deal with it. We'll deal with it tomorrow. So anyway, I ended up getting to a truck stop, got everything handled, and got home. But that was one of the worst loads that I've ever done.
Yeah, what a headache from start to finish, man. That is just quite the story. And to have it all culminate on 8 Mile is just the wildest part about it, because you can't stay there. Like, if there's any place, if you're not a driver and you are just starting out and you're thinking about where shouldn't I stay, I feel like 8 Mile's at the top of that because they made a fucking movie about it, right?
Yeah, right. So that was the most interesting part about it. I'm like, going to 8 Mile, I'm thinking, like, trucks don't go to 8 Mile. Like, they rap down there. Like, what is this?
Trucks don't go to 8 Mile,
like,
Beau, but you do
down there. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh man, that is a crazy story. Well, hey, and shout out to Chris Willenborg. We have had him on the podcast way back towards the very beginning, but what a great personality type to have as your dispatcher. I mean, it sounds like he helped you stay calm there at the beginning of this ordeal, at least for a while.
Right.
That's awesome. Well, shout out to Chris. Great work as always. Beau, I want to thank you so much. I've used up the time that I asked you for here. I know we don't get to talk to you often, but it's always a pleasure to have you on the show. I think you're a wealth of information, and just really appreciate the time today, and we'll get you back on soon, okay?
100%. All right, guys, stay safe out there, and see you later, Marcus.
That's Beau Hanke, driver training and development leader for Liquid Trucking. We'll be right back. Great stuff there from both Jake Debo and Beau Hanke. You want to thank both of them for the time coming on here today. It's easy to talk to those guys. It's a problem that we have on this podcast almost every single week. I'm not like solidly rigid on the hour time frame, okay? I'm fine. Jason's fine. Nick's fine. Everybody's fine if I move around with that. That is a goal I set myself to try to not just talk everybody's ears off, okay? Because you could hand me a wet paper towel in a dark room, and I could talk to myself about it for an hour, maybe two, okay? So I've been attenuated here by my own doing, and I'm trying to do that so I'm not just constantly blabbering at you guys. But the problem that we have is that our conversations go long because they're just that. They're organic conversations. You know, I write some stuff down. Sometimes I'll send you a couple of questions in advance of the interview to get you ready. But really, that whole interview was me and Beau texting or emailing back and forth about when he could be there. When was a good time for him that wasn't going to step on like a busy schedule. Everything else that came out of that conversation was just organic, man. And that's what we love about this podcast. Same with Jake. Jake sent me some info about himself, which is why I was able to give him that real ice rink worthy introduction. But really, he was sending that information to me. He didn't really know where I was going to come out at him from on that interview. So if you've been listening to the podcast, I guess the reason that I even bring this up is if you've been listening to this podcast as a Liquid employee and you've been thinking, man, it sounds fun. Like sometimes they sound fun, but I just don't know if I want to be on a podcast. I feel like I might freeze up. I get nervous. I don't know what to say. I promise you right now, you don't have to worry about any of that garbage. I don't know if it's a skill or if I just happened to be dumb enough to make it work for myself, but I really enjoy keeping conversations conversational. I call these interviews because, yeah, I'll ask you some questions, but more than anything, we're just having a conversation, man. We're shooting the shit. We're out here chopping it up. I don't know any of the rest of the euphemisms, but you get it. So if you're thinking about it and it's something you want to try, give me a call, shoot me an email with some of your information. I'll call you and we can talk about it before we go on the air for as long as you want to. There's also other drivers out there that are fantastic ambassadors for this show. If you'd like to call them and talk to them about it, any one of these guys that we've talked to on here hundreds of times, Polar Bear, Matt Cleach, Mike Stanfield, Quincy Rich, Michael Duncan, the list goes on, okay? You can call these guys if you have their number and talk to them about coming on the show, see what their experience is, because we always want to welcome more Liquid drivers onto the show. Until we've talked to all of you, we're always looking to add more. So get in touch with me, send me an email, podcast@liquidtrucking.com, or hook up with any number of the people you've seen or heard, on this show, and have them send my phone number to you because they do have it. And I'm glad to sit down and chat with you a little bit about it because this is a fun thing that we get to do. I don't know if you noticed that a lot of drivers, once they do it once or twice, they tend to come on a lot because it's a fun way to break up the day, man. And even if it's only a half an hour, 40 minutes, it's a lot like if you were just chatting on the phone on a party line to some of your buddies, or you were on a CB channel that actually wasn't just guys swearing at each other and making your mama jokes. It's just fun. It's one of the things I've always loved about the way that I chose to sort of broadcast in my career is that it makes you feel like you're in the room having a conversation with somebody, and that's why we get to have so much fun here on the Liquid Trucking Podcast. So that ends my TED Talk for the day about why you should come on this podcast. Head on over to liquidtrucking.com and check out the podcast landing page. You got to click the link at the top of the page with the picture of me, as I said in the intro. You'll get every single episode. Thank you for checking out the website. You guys are awesome. We appreciate all the downloads every single week. It'd blow your mind to know how many people are listening to this podcast every week, just like it blows mine. So a gigantic thank you to everyone who tunes into the Liquid Trucking Podcast on the weekly. We couldn't do it without you. We'll be back next week with another awesome episode. That'll be episode 74. That's crazy. We're 74 episodes in. Tell me what you think about it. Podcast@liquidtrucking.com. I've been your host, Marcus. Keep the shiny side up. Stay safe out there, drivers. We will see you next week.
Thanks for tuning in and being the gold standard of drivers on the road. Be sure to like and subscribe to the channel and tune in next week for another episode of the Liquid Trucking Podcast.